They fought me for the inheritance, until the DNA test destroyed everything. It started at the funeral. My father's coffin hadn't even been lowered into the ground when Nate asked if I was planning to hang on to the house like some sentimental fool. And that was before the reading of the will. The chapel smelled like lilies and regret. My tie was too tight. Lindsey kept dabbing under her eyes even though I was 90% sure she hadn't cried for real since the 8th grade. Nate stood stiff near the front, arms crossed like he was the one being buried, not Dad. I stood in the back. That's where I'd always been in this family, present but out of the spotlight. Not flashy like Nate, or sharp-tongued like Lindsey. Just me, Henry, the son who stayed behind when everyone else moved on. After the service, the three of us were ushered into a small conference room at Blake & Carver, Dad's longtime law firm. The room was too warm and smelled faintly of old books and disinfectant. I sat across from my siblings, watching them like we were in a high-stakes poker game. I didn't trust either of them, not with money, not with Dad's legacy, and especially not with the house. Blake, the family attorney, shuffled in with a leather folder and a voice like a funeral dirge. He was a stiff man with square glasses and hair that had given up decades ago. "I'll be reading the last will and testament of Mr. Raymond Harrington," he said, glancing at each of us in turn. "Please understand that all decisions were made solely by your father and are legally binding. No one said a word. We didn't need to." The tension did the talking. Blake cleared his throat and began. "To my children, Henry, Nathaniel, and Lindsey, I leave my estate to be divided equally among you. Each of you will receive 1/3 of all assets, liquid and physical." I exhaled. So did Lindsey. Nate didn't move. Blake continued. "However, the family home at 14 Meadow Lane will not be sold until all 3 parties agree unanimously to its release, or one party chooses to buy out the other 2. And just like that, it began. "Perfect," Nate said with that dry chuckle of his. "We're going to be playing Monopoly with Dad's house." "I'm not attached to it," Lindsey said quickly, brushing imaginary dust from her designer blouse. "Sell it, split it, let's all move on." "I'm not selling it," I said, more sharply than I intended. That house meant something to him. To me. Nate leaned forward, voice low. "You live in a rental apartment in Oak Grove, Henry. You gonna move back in with the ghosts?" "Maybe I will," I shot back. "At least they don't lie to your face." Blake pretended to read his papers, probably wishing he had a panic button under the table. "This is exactly why he didn't want to choose," Lindsey muttered. "He knew we'd tear each other apart if one of us got more. And he was right," I said. Nate's eyes found mine, cold and calculating. "So what's your endgame, Henry? You gonna guilt-trip us into letting you have the house for free?" "I didn't say that," I replied. "But I'm not selling. Not yet." Lindsey rolled her eyes and stood. "Well, this was productive. I have a flight tomorrow and zero interest in watching you two mark your territory like dogs." Blake raised a hand. "There's more." We all sat down again. "There is a small clause in the will regarding the transfer of the deed for the Meadow Lane property," he said, voice unusually careful. "It requires a verification of identity before ownership is finalized." "What does that mean?" I asked. "Probably nothing," Lindsey waved it off. "Dad always loved dramatic flourishes." "Verification?" Nate repeated, frowning. "Like, proof we're us?" "More like proof you're related," Blake said. "But again, probably nothing." Nate stiffened. Lindsey looked amused. I didn't know what I felt, but it lodged somewhere between suspicion and curiosity. After the meeting, I walked alone to the parking lot, keys in hand, mind spinning. The house. The clause. The way Nate's mouth twitched when Blake mentioned identity. And then I remembered something Dad had told me once, years ago, when I was helping him fix a broken step on the porch. "Your family," he said, screwing in the nail, "will be the greatest mystery you'll ever try to solve." At the time, I thought it was just one of his weird little sayings. But now I wasn't so sure. The next morning I drove out to Meadow Lane. The neighborhood was quieter than I remembered. Same cracked sidewalks, same old oak trees leaning over the road like tired sentinels. Our house stood at the end of the block, just past the curve, its white paint more gray than white now, and the porch swing hanging by one rusted chain. The gate creaked when I pushed it open. The grass hadn't been cut in weeks, and the garden my father once cared for like a second child was now a jungle of weeds and forgotten tulips. I stepped over a broken ceramic gnome that used to sit by the steps and made my way inside. The air smelled like dust, wood polish, and something older. Time, maybe. I walked through the house room by room, like I was retracing footprints from a life that no longer fit me. The kitchen still had the same chipped tile counter. The living room still had that awful floral couch Dad refused to throw away. Even the dent on the hallway wall from when I crashed my bike inside the house at age 10 was still there. I paused in the den. This was his favorite room. Books lined the walls, mismatched shelves sagging under the weight of every biography and war memoir he could find. His old leather chair still faced the fireplace, a worn dent in the cushion like an echo of him. I knelt beside the bookcase, fingers tracing the spines. I wasn't here for money, not for a fight, not to win. I just wanted this place, this symbol of everything Dad built with his calloused hands and stubborn heart, to stay in the family. To stay, right. I pulled out one of the books at random, Common Sense Investing, boring as hell, but he loved it. Something slipped out from the pages, an old folded note. My heart thumped as I opened it. I kept some things buried, but not gone. You'll find them when it's time. No signature, no date, just his handwriting, strong, sharp, unmistakable. What did he mean? Buried where? And what kind of secrets had he taken to the grave? I stood so fast the note nearly fluttered to the ground, and that's when the door creaked open behind me. I knew I'd find you here, Lindsey said, stepping in like she owned the place. She was in heels, of course she was, and wearing a sleek navy pantsuit like she had a board meeting instead of a family standoff. Behind her walked a man in a tight blue blazer, carrying a clipboard and talking into his phone. A realtor. Great. You brought a real estate agent? I asked, jaw tightening. Just getting ahead of the curve, she said breezily. We both know you can't afford to keep this place, Henry. It's too much house for someone like you. I ignored the jab. It's not for sale. Come on, she sighed. Let's not turn this into a soap opera. You get your share of the money, I get mine, and we all go home. I am home, I said quietly. That made her stop, just for a second. She gestured around. This place is falling apart. So was Dad, and you still showed up to take your cut. Her eyes flared. Low blow. I shrugged. Don't poke if you can't take a jab back. Before she could reply, we heard the sound of a car door slamming. Nate. He walked in like he'd been summoned to fix a mess. He wore sunglasses despite the clouds, and had that I'm the reasonable one tone loaded in his throat before he even opened his mouth. What's going on? He asked, scanning the room like a cop at a crime scene. She brought a realtor, I said. It's called moving on, Lindsey snapped. You said we'd wait, I reminded him. I said I'd think about it, Nate corrected, finally removing his sunglasses. His eyes flicked toward me, then away. Quick. Guilty. That was new. What? I asked. Nothing, he muttered. Just, let's not make this uglier than it has to be. Oh, so now you're the peacemaker? I said. Funny. You weren't so diplomatic yesterday. Nate ran a hand through his hair. I came here to find common ground, not trade insults. Well, good luck, I said. Because you're not taking this house from me. He didn't argue. He didn't agree. He just looked at the floor and muttered something about needing air before stepping outside. I turned back to Lindsey, who had already begun directing the realtor to get photos before the lighting gets worse. I should have left. But instead, I reached into my pocket, fingering the old note again, buried, but not gone. What had Dad meant? And why did I get the sinking feeling that whatever it was, Nate already knew? We met at Clark's Diner the next day. Neutral ground, or so Nate claimed. The place hadn't changed since high school. Checkered floors, booths with cracked red vinyl, the smell of burnt coffee and stale sugar in the air. I half expected our dad to walk in, nod at the waitress, and order the same turkey sandwich he'd eaten every Thursday. Nate was already there, sitting near the back with a coffee he wasn't drinking, and that calm managerial smile he wore like a mask. His suit was too crisp for a diner like this. "Appreciate you coming," he said, like we were two businessmen brokering peace. "I almost didn't," I replied, sliding into the booth. The waitress came and went. I didn't order anything. Nate leaned in, fingers steepled. "Look, I get it. You're attached to the house. But this doesn't have to be a war." "Then stop acting like it's a land grab," I said. He sighed, like I was the irrational one. "I'm willing to make you an offer, a real one. Cash more than your share. You walk away from the house, no drama." I stared at him. He went on, "You could buy a better place. One that doesn't need a new roof or a dozen repairs. Hell, I'll even throw in the closing costs." "You think I care about roof repairs?" I asked. "This isn't a flip. It's home." "It was home," he corrected. "Now it's just square footage sitting on emotion." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Of course that's how you see it. What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you left. You moved out, moved up, and checked out." I stayed. "I dealt with Dad when he got sick, when he couldn't drive, when he forgot what day it was." Nate's jaw tensed. "I sent money, yeah, money, real intimate." He flinched but recovered fast. "You think martyring yourself gives you more claim to the past? I think you don't get to rewrite it." Silence stretched between us. Two brothers, same blood, completely different maps of memory. He took a breath. "Look, we don't have to agree. But this can't drag out forever. Lindsey wants to move on, and frankly, so do I." "Oh, Lindsey wants to move on?" I asked. "Tell her thanks for the realtor stunt, by the way." "She was trying to be proactive," he said weakly. "She was trying to corner me," I snapped. "And now you are too. Because I know how this ends," he said quietly. "You can't win this, Henry. Sentiment doesn't beat signatures." That's when my phone buzzed. It was Lindsey. Family group chat. Her message was short, almost flippant. "For your information, Blake found a weird clause in the will. Something about ID verification? He's going to explain tomorrow." I showed Nate the message. He frowned. "What the hell does that mean?" "No idea," I said. "But apparently Dad had one last curveball up his sleeve." Nate shook his head. "Unbelievable. Even dead he's playing chess." I chuckled. That was his favorite game. "You think this is some kind of joke?" Nate snapped. "He's dead, Henry. This whole thing, it's not a test." "Isn't it?" I said. "Feels like he's watching to see what we'll do." Nate looked away. For the first time, he didn't have a retort ready. We sat in silence, the air between us heavier than before. "I'm not taking your offer," I finally said. "I'm not walking away." He nodded once, tightly. "Then I guess we're doing this the hard way." We didn't shake hands when we left. Later that night, another ping in the family chat. Lindsey again. "Blake says we'll all need to do a quick DNA test thing. Formality, apparently. Nothing big." Of course she made it sound easy, like it was no more than checking a box. But something in my chest went cold. I stared at the message for a long time. Dad had always been a planner, obsessively thorough. The idea of adding a DNA clause? It wasn't just a flourish, it meant something. Something he couldn't say out loud. And suddenly, that note I found in his book came back to me. I kept some things buried, but not gone. I didn't know what he buried. But I had a feeling the ground we were standing on wasn't as solid as we thought. When your family turns into a legal entity, I thought, all you can do is wait for the final betrayal to be notarized. Blake's office looked more like a dentist's than a law firm. The walls were a sterile white, the chairs too clean, the table in the center polished to a mirror-like sheen. The whole room gave off the vibe of a place where secrets came to die, quietly, clinically. Lindsey was already there when I arrived, perched on the edge of a seat like a vulture in designer heels. She scrolled through her phone, only looking up when she sensed me watching. "Still fighting for the family tree, Henry?" she asked with a smirk. Before I could answer, Nate walked in. He looked tired, or maybe just tense. I couldn't tell anymore. Blake entered a moment later, holding a thin file folder and looking unusually grave. "Thank you for coming," he said, closing the door behind him. We need to discuss a stipulation in your father's will that I didn't mention previously. Lindsey rolled her eyes. Is this the part where he reveals a fourth sibling in Uruguay? Blake didn't smile. No. But it is significant. Raymond added a private clause regarding the transfer of the deed to the Meadow Lane property. He stipulated that no inheritance of the house could be finalized until each beneficiary completes a DNA test to confirm biological relation. A beat of silence. Nate blinked. You're joking. I assure you I'm not, Blake said. It was his express wish. That's insane, Lindsey muttered. We're not contestants on who's your daddy. It's a formality, Blake continued. Most likely, your father's way of ensuring no contest to the estate in the future. You'd be surprised how often people come out of the woodwork after a death like this. My skin prickled. Dad was many things, stoic, stubborn, borderline paranoid, but not careless. If he added a clause like this, there was a reason, and it probably wasn't hypothetical. Do we have to? I asked, already knowing the answer. If you want access to your share of the house, Blake said evenly. Yes. Nate leaned back, feigning casualness. Fine, let's get pricked and move on. You think this is funny? Lindsey snapped. What, you scared of needles? I just don't like being treated like a suspect. A nurse entered through the side door, younger than all of us, with a clipboard and an apologetic smile. Lindsey stood, arms crossed. I go first. Let's get it over with. She sat down, rolled up her sleeve, and immediately turned pale. Oh my God, she said, gripping the chair. Is that the size of the needle? It's standard, the nurse said gently. It looks like it could harpoon a whale. I stifled a laugh. Nate didn't. Lindsey glared at both of us and muttered something about medical malpractice before the sample was taken. Nate was next. He made a dramatic show of flexing his arm like some gym rat on Instagram. Hope this doesn't break the needle, he joked. The nurse didn't laugh. Then it was my turn. I rolled up my sleeve in silence. The needle pricked, quick and clean, no pain. But the feeling that settled in my chest afterward was something else entirely. A slow burning tension, like the fuse had been lit and no one knew how long the line was. When we were done, Blake gathered the vials and sealed them in a bag. Results will take about a week, he said. You'll be notified when they arrive. And then what? I asked. Then the house can legally be transferred, as per the terms of the will. Lindsey grabbed her purse and stood. Great. Can't wait for the big family DNA reveal. She left without another word. Nate hesitated, then looked at me. You don't actually think there's something weird going on, do you? I don't know, I said honestly. Dad was dramatic. You said it yourself. Chess moves from the grave. Yeah, I said quietly. But chess only works when the pieces move exactly where you expect them to. He didn't respond. When he left, I remained behind. Blake was organizing papers, but I could tell he was watching me. Did my dad say anything about why? I asked. The clause, the test. Did he explain? Blake paused. Not directly. He just said, let the truth settle things if it ever needs to. That's all. I nodded, but my stomach turned. In the hallway outside, the fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a pale glow that made everything feel unreal. I stood there for a long time, staring at the elevator button, thinking about the note I found. I kept some things buried, but not gone. Now I understood. Dad didn't want to keep secrets. He wanted them uncovered, just not while he was still around to watch the fallout. And as much as I hated to admit it, part of me was afraid of what that fallout might be. Because sometimes the truth isn't a key. Sometimes it's a trigger. 1 week later, we were back in Blake's office. Same sterile room, same sharp-edged table. But this time, the air was thicker, tighter, like everyone knew the ground beneath us was about to shift. Blake sat across from us, the manila envelope in his hands looking far too small to carry the kind of weight it did. Thank you all for coming, he said, calm and composed as always. As you know, your father requested a DNA verification as part of the inheritance process regarding the property at 14 Meadow Lane. None of us spoke. Lindsey sat with one leg crossed over the other, pretending to be bored but twisting her necklace between two fingers. Nate sat rigid, jaw tight, one foot bouncing under the table. I leaned back, arms folded, bracing myself. Blake opened the envelope. The results confirm that Henry Harrington and Lindsey Harrington are biological children of Raymond Harrington. A small puff of air left Lindsey's lips. Relief, maybe. I didn't move. Blake looked up. However, Nathaniel Harrington is not biologically related to Mr. Harrington. Silence. Real silence. The kind that drops like a guillotine. I turned slowly toward Nate. His face had gone pale. Not just pale, gray. His eyes didn't leave the table, and I noticed with surreal clarity that his bottom lip trembled slightly before he pressed it together. "Wait, what?" Lindsey said, almost laughing. "You're kidding, right?" Blake shook his head once. "These results are conclusive." Nate still didn't speak. "You knew," I said, my voice low. Not a question. A fact I could suddenly feel in my bones. Lindsey turned toward him, eyes narrowing. "You knew?" Still, he said nothing. Blake cleared his throat gently. "Before you jump to conclusions, I should clarify. Mr. Harrington was aware of the situation. He insisted that Nate remain in the will. His words were, and I quote, 'He's my son in every way that matters, even if not by blood.' That cracked something open in me. "He knew?" I asked. "All this time, he knew?" "Yes," Blake said. "Since Nate was a teenager, I believe, I felt like I'd been sucker punched." The air in the room tilted, like someone had pulled out the center of gravity and left the rest of us floating, or falling. I stood up slowly. "You knew," I repeated, staring at Nate. "You knew when we were fighting over the house, when you tried to buy me out, when you said I couldn't win." Nate finally looked up. There was no anger in his eyes. Just guilt. Heavy, wet guilt that clung to his face like sweat. "I didn't think it mattered," he said, barely above a whisper. "It matters," I said. "You're not his son. You never were." "I was his son," Nate snapped, suddenly alive. "He raised me. He chose me. He could have kicked me out when he found out the truth, but he didn't. He kept me. Loved me. More than I deserved." "And yet you lied to us," Lindsey said sharply. "You let us think you were one of us. You fought us." "I fought for what I thought I had," Nate said. "For my place in this family." My fists clenched at my sides. "You fought for the house," I said, "knowing it wasn't yours." "I fought to stay part of something that was already slipping away," he said. "I didn't want to lose everything all at once. So yeah, maybe I held on a little too tight." I stared at him, the man I'd called my brother for nearly 4 decades. Memories flashed, backyard football games, late-night road trips, the time he punched a kid for making fun of my braces. All of it real. All of it now. Cracked. "You should have told us," I said. "I was scared," he admitted, "and ashamed." "Of what?" I snapped. "Being loved anyway?" He swallowed. "Of not being enough." Those words knocked the wind out of me. For a second, I forgot how to respond. Blake gently pushed a new document across the table, something about next steps, revised ownership, legal whatnots. I didn't touch it. Nate didn't either. Lindsey was the one to break the silence. "So what now? He's out and we split the house?" Blake paused. "Technically, Nathaniel is still named in the will, but the property clause ties the deed to biological heirs. Unless the two of you choose to gift a share." "No," I said quickly, then hesitated. Nate stood slowly, eyes still on me. "I'll walk away. I'll sign whatever you want. I don't want to fight anymore." His voice cracked on the last word. "I never wanted the house. I just didn't want to feel like I didn't belong." I nodded. Not because I forgave him, not yet. Maybe not ever. But because I understood. It was betrayal, but it was also desperation. And those two things, I realized, can look awfully similar when they sit across the same table. The garage hadn't changed. The same oil stains on the floor. The same old pegboard with Dad's rusting tools, arranged just the way he liked them. The same dusty air, thick with memory. I found Nate standing near the workbench, holding a broken socket wrench like it still had something to say. "I figured you'd come here," I said, stepping inside. He didn't turn. This place was always his, more than the house ever was. I nodded. He spent more time in here than in the living room. Silence settled between us, heavy but not hostile. I leaned against the wall and folded my arms. "So, how long?" He didn't pretend to misunderstand. I was 16, he said. Mom told me during a fight, said something awful like, "He's not even your real father." I thought she was just being cruel. I stayed quiet. But when I asked Dad, he didn't deny it, Nate continued. He just looked at me and said, "That doesn't change a damn thing." I blinked. That sounded like him. "He knew the whole time?" I asked. Nate nodded. Mom was already pregnant when she left him. Ran off with some guy she met at work. But when it fell apart, she came crawling back. Dad took her in, took me in, signed the birth certificate, told everyone I was his. "And you never told me?" I said, my voice low. "Not once. I didn't want to lose what I had," he said. "You and Lindsey, you were his blood. I was borrowed." "You were family," I said. "Until now, I still am," Nate said. "Even if I don't have the same DNA." I exhaled hard, looked around the garage, anywhere but at him. My mind was spinning with 1,000 memories. Birthday parties, summer chores, Dad teaching Nate how to change the oil. And all of it real, but also not. "Why did he add the DNA clause then?" I asked. "If he loved you, why risk exposing it?" "Maybe he knew I'd never tell you," Nate said. "Maybe he was tired of carrying the lie." I remembered something Dad once said while we worked together in this very garage, fixing a loose cabinet hinge. I must have been 12. Sometimes, he told me, the heart makes decisions the blood never would. At the time, I thought it was about marrying Mom again after she cheated on him. Now, I think it was about Nate. "You lied to me," I said quietly. "But worse, you let me fight you like you were equal in this." "I never wanted the house," he said. "I wanted not to be left behind. You had 30 years, I snapped. 3 decades where we were brothers. And in the end you chose silence." Nate set the wrench down and finally turned to face me. "I was afraid if I told the truth, it would erase everything else," he said. "I didn't want the first fact of my life to cancel out the rest." His voice was raw, no defense left in it. I looked at him, not the rival, not the liar. Just the boy my father raised, standing alone in a room full of shadows. I didn't know what to feel. Pity, anger, relief. All I felt was tired. "You should go," I said. He nodded. "I will." He walked past me, then paused in the doorway. "He loved you more than anyone, you know. Even when he was hardest on you. He just expected more." I nodded, not trusting my voice. After he left, I stayed in the garage. For a long time, I stared at the walls, the tools, the fading outlines of our childhood painted in grease and sawdust, and I thought, maybe the worst lies aren't the ones people tell you. Maybe they're the ones they keep because they love you too much to say them out loud. The porch creaked beneath my weight as I lowered myself into the old rocking chair. It was early evening, the air warm and still. Sunlight slid across the cracked railing, casting long golden shadows over the lawn that hadn't been mowed in weeks. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt still. The house was mine. Legally, emotionally, practically, mine. Lindsey had called that morning. Not to gloat, not to provoke, just to say what she needed to say. "I'm signing it over to you," she'd said. "I never wanted to live in that place. I just didn't want to lose." I didn't argue. I knew her well enough to know that winning was what mattered most to her. And once she'd proven she could, she let go. Then, later that afternoon, an envelope arrived in the mailbox. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Inside was a folded piece of paper, handwritten. "Henry, I won't contest anything. I respect Dad's decision. And yours. I hope you find peace in that house. I hope I find it somewhere else. No dramatic apology, no plea, just honesty, and maybe, finally, closure." I stayed on the porch until the sky turned the color of ash and lavender. I was about to head inside when I heard the crunch of gravel under tires. Lindsey stepped out of her car holding a cardboard box. She walked up the steps like she'd done it 1,000 times, which, of course, she had. "You didn't answer my text," she said. "I figured a face-to-face was coming anyway." She gave me a small smile. "Fair. What's in the box?" "Photos," she said. "Old ones, from Mom's attic. Thought you should have them." She handed it to me and sat on the porch swing, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. I forgot how ugly that wallpaper in the upstairs bathroom is, she said. I chuckled. Dad always said he'd change it, but he never did, she finished. Classic. We sat for a while, not saying much. The quiet between us wasn't strained anymore, just lived in. Eventually I said, I don't hate him, you know. Nate, I don't either, she replied. I was angry, still am a little, but I get it. I think Dad did too. Yeah, I think that's why he left us this mess, she added. He knew we'd either destroy each other or come out of it different, did we? She looked at me. I don't know. But we're here. We brought the box inside together. The kitchen still smelled faintly like coffee and old wood. The same light bulb flickered above the sink. The same ticking clock hung crooked on the wall. I made us a fresh pot of coffee, a little too strong, just the way Dad liked it. As it brewed, we heard the front door open. Nate stood in the entryway, uncertain, holding nothing. I didn't know if I should come, he said. You're already here, I said. Might as well sit. He did, and so the three of us sat around the kitchen table, not talking, not smiling, just drinking coffee in silence. And yet, it wasn't tense, it wasn't awkward. It was something quieter, deeper, a kind of understanding that didn't need to be spoken out loud. I looked at them, Lindsey flipping through old photos, Nate staring into his cup like it held all the answers, and felt something loosen in my chest. We were different now, not whole, not healed, but maybe human again. The past was fractured, the future unclear, but in this moment, in this creaky kitchen that still echoed with our father's voice and our mother's laughter, we were something close to real. And I thought, sometimes you lose everything, just to get back what was real all along.